What happens when a billionaire's daughter meets the one girl who isn't afraid of her money? In the shimmering heart of Seoul's most elite gala, Zara Okoye does the unthinkable. She slaps back. One moment of defiance shatters the illusion of untouchable power and ignites a scandalous romance that threatens to dismantle Korea's most prestigious corporate dynasty. When dignity collides with privilege, and raw courage challenges a billion-dollar inheritance, the world watches in silence. This is a story of forbidden attraction, ruthless social warfare, and the woman who dared to stand tall when the rest of high society bowed. Will justice prevail over the power of the one, or will the billionaire's influence crush her dreams forever? Watch until the very end to find out. Hello, fam, welcome back to my channel. Subscribe now and join us on this unforgettable journey into the world of the 1%. Don't forget to tell us where you're watching from, and thank you so much for your incredible support. The strike was as cold as the champagne being served. Zara Okoye's head snapped back, the sharp crack of Han Seorin's palm echoing against the gilded walls of the Park Grand Ballroom. The sting was immediate, a burning heat that contrasted with the ice-cold wine Seorin had just poured down Zara's blouse. For a heartbeat, the music seemed to die. Hundreds of Seoul's socialites froze, their silk dresses and designer suits shimmering under the massive crystal chandeliers. Han Seorin stood there, draped in a $1 million cream gown, her face twisted with a smug, porcelain mask of rage. That's what happens when a nobody forgets her place, she sneered, loud enough for the cameras to catch it. Zara's cheek throbbed. She could feel the collective gaze of the room, and the piercing, intrigued stare of Jisung Park, the billionaire heir standing just a few feet away with his arms crossed. For months, Zara had endured it. The snide remarks at the university, the sabotaged assignments, the way Seorin treated the world like her personal footstool. Something inside Zara, a pride rooted deeper than any bank account, finally reached its breaking point. Before the security guards could move, before Seorin could utter another insult, Zara's hand moved. The sound of Zara's palm connecting with Seorin's cheek was a thunderclap in the silent hall. It was harder, faster, and far more honest than the first blow. The ice princess stumbled, her diamond earrings rattling as she gasped in pure, unadulterated shock. A crimson mark began to bloom across her pale, expensive skin. As the cameras flashed and the billionaire's daughter stood paralyzed by the blow, the hierarchy of the room shifted forever. Zara didn't just break the silence, she broke the rules. Before the cameras flashed and the ballroom went silent, Zara Okoye was just a girl trying to survive in a world made of gold. She had come to Seoul with a big dream and a small suitcase. Every day was a race against the clock. She woke up at dawn to study, attended classes at the top university on a hard-won scholarship, and spent her nights working jobs that made her feet ache. To Zara, the glittering lights of the city weren't a playground, they were a reminder of how hard she had to work to stay afloat. She didn't mind the long hours. She was proud of her independence and the way she could send money back home to her family. But everything changed the day she first met Han Seorin. It wasn't at a fancy party, but in the university library. Seorin had walked in like she owned the very air people breathed. She was the daughter of the Park family, a name that was whispered with both fear and respect across the country. Seorin had demanded that Zara move from her favorite study table because it had the best light. When Zara calmly refused, pointing out that there were plenty of other seats, Seorin's face had twisted into a look of pure disgust. "Do you even know who I am?" Seorin had asked, her voice low and sharp. "People like you are lucky to even stand in the same room as me." Zara hadn't backed down then, and she hadn't backed down in the weeks that followed. Seorin made it her mission to make Zara's life a living nightmare. She whispered lies to professors, tripped Zara in the hallways, and made fun of her simple clothes. To Seorin, Zara was a bug to be crushed. But to Zara, Seorin was just a girl who used money to hide her own emptiness. The weight of Seorin's cruelty grew heavier every day. Zara felt the pressure of her scholarship being threatened and the cold stares of other students who were too afraid to be her friend. She learned to walk with her head high and her heart guarded. She knew that in a city like Seoul, the ice princess could freeze anyone out with a single phone call. Yet, Zara stayed. She worked harder, studied longer, and kept her dignity like a shield. She didn't know that their paths would soon lead to a grand ballroom, where the tension between them would finally snap, changing both of their lives forever. Zara was a girl used to the weight of hard work, but she was about to find out just how heavy the weight of gold could truly be. The silence in the ballroom did not last long. After Zara's hand hit Seorin's cheek, the room exploded into whispers and gasps. Seorin stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. She had never been touched like that in her entire life. Before Zara could even catch her breath, the floor manager rushed over. His face was pale, and he looked terrified. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask why Zara was covered in wine. He simply pointed toward the exit. "You're finished," he hissed. "Get out before the police arrive. You will never work in this city again." Zara didn't argue. She turned around and walked out with her head held high, even though her heart was thumping against her ribs like a trapped bird. She went to the locker room, changed out of her stained uniform, and stepped into the cool night air of Seoul. She knew she had just lost her job and likely her future, but for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. Back inside the gala, the scene was much uglier. Seorin had finally found her voice, but it wasn't a voice of power. It was a scream of pure rage. She began to throw crystal glasses against the floor, watching them shatter into tiny stars. "Find her," she yelled at her guards. "I want her in jail. I want her gone." Her brother, Jisung, watched from a distance. He didn't move to help her. He noticed how Seorin's hands were shaking. Beneath all the expensive jewelry and the loud shouting, she looked small and scared. It wasn't Zara she was afraid of, she was afraid that the world had seen she wasn't untouchable. If a girl with nothing could stand up to her, then her money didn't really make her a queen. Later that night, Seorin sat in the back of her luxury car, sobbing. Her makeup was ruined, and she looked into her phone at the photos people were already posting online. The Ice Princess had been humbled. She sent a flurry of texts to the university board and her father's lawyers. She wanted Zara Okoye to pay for making her feel weak. She promised herself that by morning, Zara would have nothing left. But as the car sped through the dark streets, Seorin couldn't stop looking at the red mark on her face. It was a permanent reminder that the rules had changed, and she wasn't the only one with power anymore. The next morning, the world felt very cold for Zara. She sat in a small coffee shop, staring at her phone. The news was everywhere. Pictures of the slap were on every social media page. She had already received an email from her university saying her scholarship was under review. It was a nice way of saying she was about to be kicked out. Zara sighed and gripped her cup. She had stood up for herself, but now it felt like she was losing everything. Suddenly, a tall shadow fell over her table. Zara looked up and froze. Standing there was Jisung Park. He was wearing a dark, expensive suit that probably cost more than her college tuition. He looked just like he did at the gala, with a calm face and sharp eyes. Zara stood up, her heart racing. She expected him to be angry. She expected him to demand an apology for his sister. "Are you here to tell me how much I owe your family for the trouble?" Zara asked, her voice steady despite her nerves. Jisung didn't look angry. Instead, he pulled out a chair and sat down. "Actually, I am here because I have never seen anyone do what you did," he said. His voice was smooth and quiet. "My sister has spent her whole life making people feel small. Most people just cry or run away. You didn't." Zara stayed silent, watching him closely. She didn't trust him yet. "It doesn't matter," she said. "I lost my job, and I am losing my school. Seorin won." Jisung shook his head. "Not yet. My sister is loud, but she does not control everything. I need a new personal assistant. Someone who is honest and who isn't afraid to speak the truth, even when it is hard." He pushed a small business card across the table toward her. "The pay is triple what you made at the gala. Plus, as long as you work for me, the university cannot touch your scholarship. My father listens to me more than he listens to her." Zara looked at the card and then back at Jisung. She saw a flicker of something in his eyes. It wasn't pity. It was respect. He wasn't offering her a hand because he felt sorry for her, he was offering it because he was impressed by her courage. "Why help me?" Zara asked. "She is your sister." "Because," Jisung replied, standing up to leave, "sometimes my family needs to be reminded that they are not the only important people in the room. Think about it, Zara. I'll expect you at the park office at 9 tomorrow morning." He walked away, leaving Zara alone with a choice. She could give up and go home, or she could step right back into the lion's den with a powerful new ally by her side. She looked at the card and felt a spark of hope. The fight was far from over. Walking into the Park office building felt like stepping onto another planet. The walls were made of glass and the floors were so shiny that Zara could see her own nervous face in them. She adjusted her simple blouse and took a deep breath. She was no longer a server at a party. She was now the personal assistant to the most powerful man in the building. As she sat at her new desk, she realized that working behind the silk curtain was very different from watching it from the outside. At first, Zara thought Jisung had it easy. He had fancy cars, expensive watches, and people who bowed whenever he walked by. But as the days passed, she began to see the truth. Jisung's life was not his own. His father, the chairman, called him every hour to demand more work. Jisung didn't have time to see friends or even eat a proper lunch. He sat in a large, quiet office and looked at papers until his eyes were red from tired lines. He wasn't a king in a palace, he was a bird in a golden cage. One late evening, while the rest of the city was asleep, Zara brought a cup of tea to his desk. She saw him staring at a photo of a mountain landscape. He looked lonely. "You don't have to work this hard," Zara said softly. "You have all the money in the world." Jisung looked up and gave her a sad smile. "In my family, money isn't for fun. It is a chain. My father expects me to be perfect, just like he expects Seorin to be a perfect trophy. If I fail, I lose my family. If I stay, I lose myself." Zara felt a strange pull in her heart. She realized they were more alike than she thought. Zara was a prisoner of her bills and her struggle to survive, but Jisung was a prisoner of his name and his father's rules. They were both fighting to be seen for who they really were. For the first time, the billionaire heir didn't seem like a boss or a stranger. He seemed like a friend. As they talked into the night, the walls between them began to crumble. Zara shared stories about her home and her dreams of becoming a leader who helped people. Jisung listened with wide eyes, amazed by her freedom. Behind the silk curtain of wealth, Zara found a man who just wanted to be free. She knew that helping him would be dangerous, especially with Seorin watching from the shadows, but she was no longer doing it just for the paycheck. She was doing it because everyone deserves to choose their own path. The peace between Zara and Jisung did not stay for long. While they were working together to build a better future, Han Seorin was busy planning a trap. She could not stand seeing Zara walk through the halls of her family's company with her head held high. To Seorin, every smile Zara shared with Jisung was like a fresh slap to her face. She wanted Zara gone, and she wanted it to happen in the most painful way possible. One afternoon, Seorin waited until the office was empty for a lunch break. She slipped into the small area where Zara kept her bag and coat. In her hand, she held a small, velvet box. Inside was a golden watch that had belonged to their grandfather. It was a priceless family heirloom that the whole city would recognize. With a cruel smile, Seorin tucked the watch deep into the bottom of Zara's bag. She then hurried away and called the police, her voice sounding fake and worried as she reported a terrible theft. When Zara returned to her desk, she found the office filled with people. Her heart sank as she saw two police officers standing next to a crying Seorin. Jisung was there, too, looking confused and upset. "Someone stole my grandfather's watch," Seorin wailed, pointing her finger at Zara. "I saw her near the safe earlier. Check her things." The police officers looked at Zara. "Miss, we need to search your bag," one of them said. Zara felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. She knew she had done nothing wrong, but she saw the look of victory in Seorin's eyes. As the officer reached into her bag and pulled out the golden watch, the room went silent. The heavy gold shined under the office lights, making Zara look like a common thief in front of everyone. "I didn't take that," Zara whispered, her voice shaking. She looked at Jisung, hoping he would believe her. But the evidence was right there in the officer's hand. Seorin stepped forward, her face turning into a mask of fake sadness. "How could you do this after my brother was so kind to you? You're just a dishonest girl who doesn't belong here." The officers moved to put handcuffs on Zara's wrists. Zara felt her world falling apart. She had worked so hard to keep her dignity, but now it looked like she would lose her freedom as well. As she was led toward the elevator, she looked back at Seorin, who was barely hiding a wicked grin. The trap had snapped shut, and for a moment, it seemed like the billionaire daughter had finally won. Zara was terrified, but even as the cold metal touched her skin, she refused to look away. She knew the truth, even if no one else did. The police officers started to lead Zara toward the door. The heavy golden watch sat on the desk like a piece of poison. Seorin was still pretending to cry, but Zara could see the spark of joy in her eyes. Everything felt like a bad dream. Zara looked at Jisung one last time. She didn't beg for help, but her eyes were full of hurt. She felt like he was her only friend, and now he was watching her be taken away for a crime she did not commit. Jisung stood very still. His heart was racing. He knew his father was watching the security cameras from his big office upstairs. If Jisung helped Zara, he would be going against his own family. He would be calling his sister a liar in front of everyone. His father had always told him that the Park family must stay together, no matter what. If he chose Zara, he might lose his job, his money, and his future as the heir to the company. Wait. Jisung's voice rang out through the quiet office. It was loud and firm. The police officers stopped. Seorin stopped her fake crying and looked at her brother with a confused frown. Jisung, what are you doing? She asked, her voice getting sharp. She stole from us. Jisung walked over to Zara. He looked at the handcuffs and then at the officers. There has been a mistake, he said clearly. That watch was not stolen. I gave it to Zara this morning. I asked her to take it to the jeweler to be cleaned. A giant gasp went around the room. Seorin's face turned from pale to bright red. That's a lie, she screamed, forgetting to act sad. You didn't give her anything. You're choosing this girl over me. Jisung didn't blink. He looked straight at the police. I am the future head of this company. Are you saying I am lying? The officers looked at each other, feeling very nervous. They didn't want to upset the powerful Jisung Park. They slowly took the handcuffs off Zara's wrists. We are very sorry, Mr. Park, the officers said. They hurried out of the room as fast as they could. Seorin was shaking with anger. Father will hear about this, she hissed before stomping out of the office. Zara stood there, her wrists red from the metal. She looked at Jisung with wide eyes. Why did you do that? She whispered. You told a lie to save me. Now your father will be so angry with you. Jisung looked at the empty hallway where his sister had disappeared. He knew he had just started a war within his own family. He had risked everything he owned for a girl he barely knew. I didn't tell a lie to save you, Zara, he said softly. I told the truth about who my sister is. I am tired of living in a house built on lies. He grabbed Zara's hand and led her toward a private elevator. We can't stay here. My father will send his own security soon. I need to hide you until I can find the real proof. Jisung took Zara to a secret apartment he kept in the city, a place his father didn't know about. As they sat in the quiet room, Zara realized that Jisung was no longer just her ally. He was her protector, and he had given up his crown just to keep her safe. The weight of gold was heavy, but for the first time, Jisung felt light because he had finally chosen his own path. The secret apartment was quiet, but Zara's mind was loud. She sat at a small table with Jisung, a laptop glowing between them. Outside, the city of Seoul was busy and bright, but inside this room, they were planning a revolution. Jisung had risked his entire life to pull Zara away from the police, and now they had to prove why he was right to do it. They knew that one lie from Jisung wouldn't be enough to stop his father or Seorin forever. They needed the real truth. My sister has done this before, Jisung said, his voice sounding heavy. She thinks that because she has money, she can erase people. But the internet never forgets. Together, they began to search through old school records and social media posts from years ago. Zara's fingers flew across the keys. At first, it was hard to find anything. The Park family was very good at hiding bad news. But then, Zara found a message from a girl who had worked as a driver for the family 2 years ago. The girl had been fired suddenly and accused of a crime she didn't do. Then, they found a student from Seorin's middle school who had moved away after being bullied every single day. As Zara read their stories, her heart began to ache. These weren't just names on a screen. These were real people whose lives had been hurt by Seorin's cruelty. One by one, Zara and Jisung reached out to them. They used a private account to send messages, asking for the truth. To Zara's surprise, the victims started to answer. They were scared, but they were tired of being silent. She made me feel like I was nothing, one girl wrote. I thought no one would ever believe me because I am poor. Zara looked at the screen, and tears filled her eyes. She realized that the slap in the ballroom wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had been forced to bow down to Seorin. Zara wasn't just an underdog fighting for her own scholarship anymore. She was becoming a voice for all the people Seorin had tried to crush under her expensive shoes. "We are going to tell their stories, aren't we?" Zara asked, looking at Jisung. Jisung nodded firmly. He was looking at a video they had found from a hidden camera in an old hallway. It showed Seorin laughing as she pushed a maid into a fountain. "We are going to show the world that gold cannot hide an ugly heart," he promised. Working late into the night, they organized the evidence. They had photos, emails, and videos. Every piece of proof felt like a brick they were using to build a bridge to justice. Zara felt a new kind of strength growing inside her. She wasn't afraid of the Ice Princess anymore. She knew that Seorin's power was built on fear, but the truth was much stronger than fear. As the sun began to rise over the city, Zara looked at the long list of names they had gathered. She felt a deep sense of purpose. She had come to Korea to study and get a degree, but she was learning a much more important lesson. She was learning that standing up for yourself is good, but standing up for others is what makes a person truly powerful. Zara and Jisung were no longer just two people hiding in an apartment. They were a team, and they were ready to show the world the viral truth that would change everything. The day of the big press conference arrived, and the air in Seoul felt thick with excitement. Han Seorin stood backstage in a room filled with flowers and expensive cameras. She was wearing a dress that cost more than a house, and she was smiling. Her father had arranged this meeting to tell the world that Zara was a thief and that the Park family was perfect. Seorin thought she had won. She thought the Ice Princess was back on her throne. She walked out onto the stage, and the bright lights hit her face. Thousands of people were watching on their TVs and phones. "My family has always been a symbol of hard work," Seorin began, her voice sounding sweet and fake. "It is sad when someone we trust tries to hurt us. Zara Okoye stole from my grandfather, and she must be punished." But suddenly, the large doors at the back of the hall swung open. The room went silent. Zara Okoye walked down the center aisle. She wasn't wearing a server's uniform, and she wasn't hiding. She was wearing a simple, professional suit, and her eyes were full of fire. She didn't look like a victim, she looked like a leader. Next to her was Jisung, holding a small silver drive in his hand. "I am not a thief," Zara's voice rang out, clear and strong. "But I am a witness." Seorin's face turned white. "Get her out of here," she screamed, but no one moved. Jisung walked up to the stage and plugged the drive into the big screen. Suddenly, the screen behind Seorin changed. It didn't show the Park family logo. Instead, it showed the videos and photos Zara and Jisung had found. The world saw Seorin pushing people, laughing at the poor, and planting the watch in Zara's bag. They heard the voices of the victims who had been silent for so long. The cameras that were meant to praise Seorin now showed her looking like a monster. The reporters began to shout questions, but they weren't asking about the watch anymore. They were asking about the years of bullying and lies. Zara stood on the stage, looking directly at the girl who had tried to destroy her. "You thought your money made you untouchable," Zara said, her voice echoing through the hall. "But respect is earned, not bought. The truth is finally out, and you can't hide behind your father's name anymore." Seorin looked around the room, but even her father's guards were looking away. The Ice Princess was melting under the heat of the truth. The public's love for the billionaire daughter shattered like glass. In that moment, the world didn't see a powerful princess. They saw a girl who was finally being held responsible for her actions. Zara had walked into the room as a whistleblower, and she was walking out as a hero. The battle was almost over, and for the first time, justice was the winner. The dust finally settled on the great scandal of the Park family. In the weeks after the press conference, the world watched as the Ice Princess lost everything. Because of the truth Zara and Jisung had shown, the board of directors stripped Seorin of all her titles. She was no longer a leader or a face of the company. She was sent away to a quiet house far from the city to think about her actions. The name Han Seorin, which once made people tremble with fear, was now just a lesson about what happens when you treat others poorly. For Zara, life began to change in the best ways possible. With the help of Jisung and the evidence of her hard work, the university not only kept her scholarship but also gave her an award for her courage. She no longer had to work 3 jobs just to buy books. Instead, She spent her time finishing her studies and helping other international students who felt alone in the big city. She became a symbol of hope for anyone who felt like an outsider. Graduation day was a bright, sunny afternoon. The air was filled with the sound of music and the happy shouts of students. Zara stood in the center of the crowd, wearing her black gown and a cap. She looked at her diploma and felt a deep sense of peace. She had come to Korea with nothing but a dream, and she was leaving with so much more. She had her degree, but more importantly, she had her dignity. Jisung stood right next to her, looking proud in his own graduation robes. He was no longer the quiet, lonely heir who lived in a golden cage. He had taken over the family foundation and turned it into a place that helped people instead of scaring them. He looked at Zara and smiled, his eyes full of respect and love. They weren't just a billionaire and a student anymore. They were two people who had changed a whole system by standing together. As they walked across the stage to receive their honors, the crowd cheered louder than ever before. Zara realized that the weight of gold was nothing compared to the weight of a good heart. She had proven to the city of Seoul and to the entire world that money can buy many things, but it can never buy respect. Dignity was the only currency that truly mattered, and Zara Okoye was now the richest girl in the room. Hand in hand, Zara and Jisung walked toward their new life, ready to build a legacy that was based on kindness, truth, and the courage to always slap back against injustice.